It's time for Debrief, 30 World's weekly roundup of top stories. This episode is all about the United Nations General Assembly.
Live shots here from the lawn of the White House.
Are we good?
Thank you so much.
Mr. Ambassador, you were joining that meeting.
We're waiting to see President Erdogan.
Thank you. The UK, Canada and Australia have officially recognised the state of Palestine as Israel refuses to end the war in Gaza.
The United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
The Commonwealth of Australia recognises the state of Palestine.
Canada recognizes the state of Palestine.
It was a declaration from French President Macron that earned him a standing ovation at the United Nations.
I declare that France today recognizes the state of Palestine.
For Palestinians, every new country recognizing their state feels like a spark of hope. But that hope collides with the reality around them as illegal Israeli settlements keep spreading. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed
there will never be a Palestinian state.
With overwhelming support, the UN General Assembly adopted the New York Declaration, calling for the recognition of a Palestinian state and the realization of the two-state solution.
The U.S. President Donald Trump is meeting with Arab and Islamic leaders on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, hailing the group as the ones who can end the war on Gaza. The meeting includes leaders from Turkey, Qatar, Pakistan, and other Islamic nations who have all committed to stopping the war.
We had a really great meeting. I think a lot was determined at that meeting. And I have to meet with Israel, and I have to do that also.
World leaders have gathered in New York, where the United Nations General Assembly's debate is underway. The war in Gaza has dominated discussion a day after more countries recognized the state of Palestine.
To unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state, the rewards would be too great for Hamas.
This is not a fight against terror. It's an occupation, expulsion, genocide, and more accurately, a policy of mass slaughter.
If the release of Israeli hostages is the end of the war, the government of Israel is abandoning that notion. Their goal is to destroy Gaza.
The U.S. refused to let the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, come to New York to address the UN General Assembly. But the UN still wanted him here, so Thursday he wound up addressing the world body for the second time this week by video link.
There have been many efforts, many international initiatives without reaching an end to this tragic situation that the Palestinian people living under the occupation.
We saw this unprecedented walkout of members of the General Assembly. He said he's never seen the General Assembly so empty ahead of a speech by an Israeli leader.
Because it's symbolic of the most important trend, I believe, around the entire world, which is much more dynamic, peaceful protests against the policies of the State of Israel.
Here in New York, protesters have come out onto the streets to have their voices heard. They're calling for an end to the genocide on Gaza.
The principles of the United Nations are under assault as never before. As we meet, civilians are targeted and international law trampled in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and beyond. As we meet, poverty and hunger are on the rise as progress on the Sustainable Development Goals falters. As we meet, the planet burns.
As the UN commemorates its 80th year, I asked the Security Council President, what is there to celebrate?
That's, again, very difficult questions. Deep frustration and deep skepticism exist in the role of the UN.
I ended 7 wars, and sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help.
He criticized the UN and told world leaders to end the experiment of open borders. He said Europe was in serious trouble over migration, criticized it for failing to cut off Russian energy, and called climate change the greatest con job ever.
Several things that he spoke about. It's almost difficult to say where to begin after Donald Trump's address.
Apparently, when he was on the escalator coming up, it stopped in the middle, and then his prompter failed, which caused a lot of laughter. But He spent a good portion of his long, wide-ranging speech attacking the UN institution.
It is the second day of the UN General Assembly. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has been speaking as well. He's vowed that Tehran will never build nuclear weapons.
Well, for the first time in nearly 6 decades, a Syrian leader has attended the UN General Assembly. During his speech, Ahmed al-Shara said Israeli attacks on his country are threatening regional stability.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke at the United Nations General Assembly. He appealed for urgent action from the international community to stop Russia's war.
What can Sudan or Somalia or Palestine or any other people living through war really expect from the UN or the global system? For decades, just statements and statements.
Zelensky likely felt confident many would hear his words in the wake of growing support from what had been one of his most vocal critics. Donald Trump on Tuesday said he believes Ukraine could reclaim territory taken by Moscow.
And even more top stories coming your way in the News and Brief.
Several unidentified drones over Denmark and Norway on Monday put Europeans on high alert. The incursions caused Oslo and Copenhagen's airports to temporarily shut down and led to flight disruptions affecting thousands.
I certainly cannot rule out in any way that it is Russia. We've seen drones over Poland that shouldn't have been there. We've seen activity in Romania, violations of Estonian airspace. We've seen cyber attacks on European airports over the weekend. Now there have been drones in Denmark, and it appears there have been drones in Oslo and elsewhere in Norway as well.
On Tuesday, UK police made an arrest in connection with the cyber attack that shut down check-in systems at Heathrow, as well as airports in Brussels and Berlin last week. They're Europe's busiest travel hubs. The British National Crime Agency, or NCA, said a man in his 40s was arrested on suspicion of offenses under the Computer Misuse Act before being released on bail. The ransomware attack reportedly didn't endanger passengers' safety, but targeted Collins Aerospace, the company behind the check-in systems. It threw travel plans for many into chaos, stranding passengers and delaying and disrupting flights across Europe. The NCA says the investigation is ongoing. On Wednesday, Turkey joined Italy and the US for military drills in and above the Adriatic Sea, part of NATO's Neptune Strike 25.3 exercises. Ankara's Anadolu Task Group teamed up with Italian amphibious forces and Strike for NATO, a fleet led by the US 6th Fleet commander, to flex some naval muscle. The 5-day operation started on Monday and stretched across the Mediterranean, North, Baltic, and Adriatic seas, pulling in over 10,000 troops from 13 allied nations to show off NATO's maritime firepower.
We have a big capacity and capability, so therefore it's very important for us to demonstrate our capability and our support to our ally, and on the other end, the interoperability of the units is very important, as you can see.
From the war in Ukraine to rising tensions in the Middle East, NATO's ability to act fast together is more important than ever.
On Thursday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was hosted by US President Donald Trump at the White House. The two NATO allies discussed several topics, including defense, trade ties, energy deals.
Shortly after the meeting, Turkey's energy minister confirmed the two countries had signed a deal to deepen their partnership in nuclear energy.
And regional flashpoints from Syria to Ukraine. Trump took the opportunity to go hard on Russian President Vladimir Putin.
They've lost millions of lives already, and for what? For what? Disgraceful.
But it was all smiles between Trump and Erdogan.
President Erdogan has wrapped up his U.S. trip after a major address to the UNGA, diplomatic engagements, and a White House visit. The coming weeks will show whether the constructive dialogue between the two leaders will translate into lasting policy.
And now for a taste of our programs. This week, we showcase Beyond the Game.
UEFA, football's governing body in Europe, is still yet to suspend Israel. They've decided against banning the nation from competitions amid its ongoing war. According to the UN, their ongoing genocide in Gaza. And as Robin Adams reports, it has only exposed football's hypocrisy.
Stop killing children. Stop killing civilians. When UEFA unfurled this banner at the Super Cup match between Paris Saint-Germain and Tottenham in August, it seemed clear the football organization had lost patience with Israel. The message was loud and clear, UEFA said. The world watched as 9 refugee children from Palestine, Afghanistan, Iraq and Ukraine carried the banner onto the field before kickoff. This followed the death of Suleiman al-Ubaid, popularly known as the Palestinian Pele. The 41-year-old was killed in an Israeli attack on civilians, queuing for humanitarian aid in the southern Gaza Strip.
The international support institutions abandoned us. They never called, never offered protection. They failed Suleiman in life and they failed his family in death. They should have shielded us from war and hunger. Now I want my son, Nassim, to carry on his father's path and his dream.
UEFA were criticized in some quarters because their tribute to al-Ubaid did not mention who was responsible for his death. Israel's war on Gaza is nearing the 2-year mark. The death toll has passed 65,300, and a United Nations Commission of Inquiry has found that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Yet the nation is still free to compete in European football, and Maccabi Tel Aviv are currently in action in the Europa League. UEFA's soft stance on Israel is in complete contrast to their treatment of Russia. When that country started its war on Ukraine in 2022, they were kicked out of UEFA just a few weeks later. Russia remain in the sporting wilderness. Football governing body FIFA and its president Gianni Infantino, who have been on a charm offensive in the lead-up to next year's World Cup, have been silent on the Israel matter too. Israel are in the same World Cup qualifying group as Italy, and the 2006 champions have had to face some uncomfortable questions at press conferences.
I'm sorry someone misunderstood. I only said that we were unlucky to draw Israel in our group because they are a good team, because they have players who can cause us problems. All I said, if we look closely at what I said, is that I'm sorry for what's happening. I'm a man of peace for all, but I never said it was a shame we had to play against Israel.
Spain have been a lot more direct in their response. The current European champions have refused to take part in next year's World Cup if Israel are allowed to compete. With more and more voices from the sports world adding to the global calls for decisive action against Israel, UEFA may soon find it's out of time, excuses and options. Robert Adams, TRT World.
Are we surprised about the indecision that these governing bodies are having so far?
No, we shouldn't be surprised. Look, Gianni Infantino, I think there's this interesting dynamic where they're saying he's not consistent with his policies. He didn't want to really throw Russia out either. Like, he doesn't actually care about Palestinians as much as he doesn't care about Ukrainians. The reality is with him, specifically in FIFA, they don't want to ban anyone, they don't want to suspend anyone, and the only thing that really makes an impact is economics and other decisions.